Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. We're back in the pub just before the Easter break. It's me, Doogie, today. Chris is still in South Africa.
Still sunning himself.
I know. And Patrick Van Straten, obviously, to answer your questions. The first one was sent in by Jack Cole, 221-59028. He says, who is the player your favourite club should sign this summer? Are we actually going to do Arsenal and Sunderland?
No, we're not, actually. I think we've decided.
We've decided off camera we're not doing either of them.
Well, so all my Sunderland research, is that the
All
window?
your Sunderland
What's a
research
waste
is
of
done.
time?
I know,
So
alas.
bad.
But we thought we'd focus on Man United because
Okay.
they're probably the most interesting in this. And well, and probably need
did
the
Arsenal
biggest
last
rebuild.
week as well.
And we
Yeah,
talked
right.
heavily about Arsenal. But
fine,
Man
whatever.
United have obviously had not a great week, not a great few weeks, really, since that PSG result. They're obviously beaten 3-0 by Barcelona. Not really a surprising result. Barcelona are clearly streets ahead of United, and fans that got too overexcited after that PSG result against an understrength PSG side, I should say, got their comeuppance. But yeah, great performance from Messi in particular, but I don't think there's anything to fear too much for Liverpool going into that semi-final. But on to Man United, because it has slightly, expectations have been levelled after that crazy start on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I think they got something like 32 out of a possible first 36 points. I think they were leading the Premier League form table after about 9 games in the ridiculous vein of form. And it's slightly fallen apart, well, not fallen apart, tempered expectations and shown that there's still a lot of work to be done this summer. In the same way that all the good that came out of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's first 9 games wasn't solely down to Solskjaer's management. The last 9 have shown just how much needs to be done, I think.
I agree.
And there is 3 or 4 key areas where, unless they recruit, they have literally zero hope of challenging for the title next year. Especially with 2 of the greatest, I'm not going to say 2 of the greatest sides the Premier League has ever seen, but 2 exceptional sides in Man City and Liverpool.
I would say that.
United are miles behind, and they need a right back, a right winger, but I'm going to focus on centre backs because I think that is where the most difference can be earned. I think Lindelof has looked much more assured in the last 4 or 5 months, and I think he could partner whoever comes in, and I'm suggesting that man, it's not really a surprise, should be Kalidou Koulibaly. 27-year-old from Napoli, seems like this is going to be his window to move. There was talk of it last summer, and there is arguments about why would he move this summer when he wouldn't move last summer if they were chasing him. But I think they're just going to be able to offer more money this year and really go for it. They're even more desperate. I mean, last year they obviously finished second, but their need for recruiting in central defence was still there. This year it should be Koulibaly. Great on the ball, about 2.5 tackles and interceptions per 90, which isn't outstanding, but they play in a possession-heavy side. He would make a massive difference to this defence. And I'm also suggesting they get in Alderweireld as well. £25 million release clause for about a month in the summer, bringing both of them. Wow. And then you've potentially got options to challenge for the title, at least be around 3rd or 4th consistently next year.
Do you think it's a realistic hope that United can get Koulibaly?
Well,
I don't think at this stage we're going to finish in the Champions League
I think you
spots.
can get Koulibaly.
Even in Europa
Di
League.
Lorenzo
but you're
said
not gonna challenge
110
for the
million is his, that's where the bidding's going to start at.
Oh my God.
It's a
Which
lot of
is
money.
a hell of a lot of money. It'd be 40 million more than Van
for
Dijk.
less than that.
No, he's just signed a new contract.
God.
Just signed a new contract,
But
a new
even-
5-year contract.
But
as
even
well.
still, do you not reckon that they'd sell him for 100 mil?
I actually
He's
don't.
3 years younger than Koulibaly.
I think they're more likely to offload Icardi than they are Skriniar.
Well, yeah, I think they're definitely going to offload Icardi. But I don't know, there's the thing with Koulibaly where people say, like, oh, if United want to challenge for the title next year, United are not going to challenge for the title next year.
Unless they get all these targets.
No, even still, I don't think they'll do it. Because
Really?
because I think that this season, like, Liverpool
agree.
and Man City have better squads and better managers. Like, they have the combination of those things.
And will improve as well.
And you buy those guys, and it's very rare that you buy a bunch of guys and they're all immediately great in that first season. You know, it often takes them a while to bed in. So I think that
although with the top talent that Liverpool have recruited in the last 12 months, we've seen an instant impact.
they've generally only done 1 or 2, and we haven't actually seen an instant impact. Like, so for instance, we're going to come on to Naby Keita later, but Fabinho took some time to bed in. Like, I mean, Van Dijk was
and Alisson.
was pretty assured, but Alisson, I'd say that a goalkeeper as well, like, is easier to slot into a side than, say, a central
agree with that.
midfielder. So if they want a new DM, a new right back, a couple of new centre backs, maybe a backup left back, maybe another right winger, then suddenly you look at Man United and you're like, this is a whole new side. And those guys have got to learn to play together. I mean, for me, I agree, centre-backs would be a good area to strengthen. I'm not sure I'd go for Koulibaly just because of the cost and because I think maximum you get 3 or 4 years out of him.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that at any point in those 3 or 4 years you're going to compete for the title.
It's a shame the league is on his way to Barcelona.
This would be
the
the sensible guy. And if Umtiti weren't so injury prone, I'd also say, you know, it looks like he's on the way out. He'd be amazing for United, especially seeing as he plays on the left like Koulibaly. But for me, I mean, I said at the beginning of the season when we did it on the podcast, when we were talking about rebuilding Man United, I said Aaron Wan-Bissaka there.
You called it.
Well, I mean, back then, like, Hamill disagreed. Hamill was not convinced. And
I wasn't either because of the small sample
he'd
size.
only played about 15 games at that point. And Hamill suggested Thomas Meunier, and I feel pretty good about that comparison.
The Oracle.
Both those guys are now being linked with Man United. So it does seem like, you know, they're thinking along the same lines. But Wan-Bissaka's just had a sensational season. Okay. I mean, he's 21 years old, he's homegrown, he's very fast, good dribble numbers, though his creativity still needs to be worked on, but I think that's partially a function of playing for Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
And defensively, he is as good as any fullback I've ever seen defensively. I mean,
that's a claim though.
But he's so fast and he's so good at reading the game. Like when you look at his numbers, he doesn't get dribble past, and when you watch him, it doesn't really happen either. I mean, I actually thought that that the other day, I think it was it Dean Saunders who was saying that like Wan-Bissaka has stuff to work on defensively.
Yeah. He can't tackle.
I actually think that
coming from a Welsh centre forward as well.
I think he made some actually reasonable points, like in the sense of like Wan-Bissaka does get stood up and someone goes past him, but the point is his recovery pace is so good.
Yeah. I didn't actually see what Dean said.
They don't tend to get away. So I mean, like he's not wrong that there's stuff to work on, but I think he's the best defensive fullback, best young defensive fullback in Europe, and I think he's one of the best defensive prospects in the last 5 years. And United should absolutely snap him up and just solve that position.
Yeah, I really agree. I know we're going to come on to right winger. You've identified that as a definite problem there. I couldn't agree more. I think I'm actually going to say more of a desperate area for United than a right winger is a central midfielder. Especially with the exit of Ander Herrera to PSG this summer. That looks like that's happening. I only see Nemanja Matic going backwards week on week, really, particularly off the ball. He is still a very good player on the ball, very composed in possession. He's actually pretty decent against the press because his passing lines through the channels are pretty strong. Yeah. Off the ball, too slow. Too much of a lunger, always giving away fouls. I'm not the biggest fan of him off the ball. I think there's an upgrade to be had there. And obviously with no Ander Herrera, who has started the majority of our games this season, particularly under Solskjaer, the right central midfielder alongside Pogba, I think United are probably going to dip into the central midfield market. Obviously the player I want us to sign is Rabiot, who would be an incredible pickup if we could somehow get him out of the jaws of Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Juventus.
It's no clearer where he's going, though, is it?
Well, I think it would worry me if I was Rabiot that I haven't agreed a pre-contract. You know, he had the option to agree a pre-contract under European law in January. Not happened. And why hasn't that happened? Because clearly PSG don't want him.
Yeah.
So our club's biding their time because they know he's going to get desperate in the summer and want a move at less cost because he's asking for 10 million euros per season and a 10 million euros signing on bonus. When you look at that, you think, oh, that's quite hefty for a sign on bonus, but you're getting probably one of the top 5 young central midfield talents in world football for free.
I'd say maybe number one.
Maybe number one.
Like possibly behind Frank.
Absolute freak. You know, this is a guy whose numbers we've talked about heavily on the podcast over the last few weeks, but upwards of, I think at the start of this season, he was around 7 tackles and interceptions per 90 for the first 6 months
and
of the season.
deep progressions there.
Deep progressions.
Like 10 progressive passes, but the next best in Europe was Lo Celso on about 7,
But not only 10 progressive passes, it's also like 4 progressive dribbles.
Yeah, it's absolutely
If you look at the progressive chart where you've got everybody laid out, you can see everybody bunched together. You know how usually you've got Messi out here, it's Rabiot out here comparatively to everybody else. Absolute freak. So if you could pick him up for free, it'd be an unbelievable bit of business.
The question did say realistic signings, and surely we've got to look at Man United's current standing.
Yeah.
They are not in the top echelons of places people
But the
want to
reason
go
I
anymore.
raise Rabiot is
because no one snapped him up.
why has nobody got him?
I just think he'll still have offers.
But United do have a history
Better
of
offers is what I mean.
But United, I wouldn't say they would financially.
Because
they would for winning titles, but I feel like
I don't think you can have Barca can't have Frenkie and Adrian Rabiot in the same central midfield. I
They
just
get
don't
rid
think
of-
you
I think
can.
they could, but they'd
They
have
get rid
to
of
tell
one
one
of
of them just
Rakitic
to
or
be an
Vidal.
idiot.
It'd be a nightmare. Bayern aren't the sort of club that are going to rip up their wage structure to sign him in that way, and he's obviously a
But
problem.
why are we
behind
not
the
hearing
scenes.
any media reports of Man United really a firm interest?
We have heard Man United and Man City linked over the past few weeks,
Have we?
But-
Okay, I can
but-
barely keep up with.
But it has
Rakitic,
just
yeah.
been gossip.
but it's
though.
been gossip.
Like, I mean,
Equally,
you'll offer money.
you've heard I do wonder though whether the fact that United haven't been linked is more of a sign that they are actually interested, because every other top club's been linked. And it feels like it's just being pumped out by his own media team. Oh, we're in talks with Real Madrid this week. We're in talks with Bayern Munich this week. Juventus this week. It's literally gone through month
They're
for month.
doing a great
every
job
big
of
team.
keeping him in everyone's confidence.
Exactly.
aren't
So I think
But if you don't get him, who do you go for? Like,
it's a tough one, man.
that's the
very,
concern.
very tough one. I really don't know.
Do you take a punt on a young player? Because the fact that you're going for Koulibaly suggests that you don't want to take a punt on young guys and say, you know what, maybe we'll win the title in 5 years. You want to do the Man United thing and be like, let's just buy a bunch of guys who
Yeah.
are 26
They were
and
great,
ready to go.
yeah.
But
What do? Do you go
the
out
trouble
and get Allen?
also is, do you get a DM to replace Matic in the long run, or do you
Yes.
get a central midfielder to replace Herrera in the short term who's leaving, or do you trust Fred/McTominay? There's a lot of problems with that midfield.
I think you get a DM because I think you can do at least a season and then next year get the central midfielder.
It's
And
the
then
beauty
you
of
can play
Rabiot
with
is
Fred,
the
McTominay,
beauty of
Chris
Rabiot is he can
Pogba.
fulfil both roles in that sort of area.
I think the DM is where you've been lacking, really.
yeah,
but-
potentially.
But I mean, like, is Pogba going to stay? Like, I mean, you're going to have to keep Pogba because otherwise you're going to have to go out and buy like 3 midfielders this summer.
Definitely, it's not
Pogba's
going to be an
staying.
easy summer. And then obviously we come on to the right wing situation, which has been a problem at Manchester United for so long. I think Mata's going to leave this summer. I can't see us agreeing that new contract. I think his sort of demands, comparatively to our demands, is quite a disparity there. So I don't think he'll sign a new contract, rightly so. Don't think he's good enough for this level anymore. Let's move Juan Mata on. Alexis Sanchez, United are going to be desperate to sell him. Who buys him
Yeah,
is
good luck.
another situation
Yeah.
entirely. Stick it if we can get him to China for free. Get him to China for free. But I just can't see it happening. To be totally honest, I don't see any suitors in world football for Alexis Sanchez. So then you ask yourself, which right winger do we sign?
Well, there's a couple of options that are being touted
Jadon,
really
obviously.
strongly. Jadon Sancho.
Who is it
obviously.
after Jadon though?
It's well, from what I read, because I was doing a bit of research ahead of this. Nicola Pepe is the
Pepe,
sort of
yeah.
second one that they're being
but
linked
I
to.
mean, in fairness, he's linked with everyone, and I think he's probably going to Bayern.
Probably going to Bayern, but if
yeah.
Man United could get him, I think that'd be a great signing. Because personally, I don't see Jadon Sancho leaving this summer.
Yeah, though again, he's not.
Really?
Yeah.
If their issue has been width, then like going and getting Pepe, who's a left footer who plays off the right, is not really going to give you width. Like you've basically then got exclusively guys who want to come inside, and you're going to be really reliant on your fullbacks.
Yeah,
to
true,
get
but then
forward.
Jadon Sancho's also, he mainly does his best work coming in.
But he's at least a right footer though who plays on the right.
And he
Like,
gets
I
the
mean,
byline
like-
a lot, doesn't
I
he?
mean,
He could
if
play
you
on
could
both
sign
sides.
Jadon Sancho, you sign Jadon Sancho.
You don't think
100%.
he's going to
Yeah.
leave this summer?
I just don't think he will. I mean, he's got a contract until 2021. Dortmund don't. I know everyone will say, oh, they sold Ousmane Dembele. They've sold in the past when they've needed to, but I just don't think there's any need to in this situation.
But have they?
It's going to come down to him though.
Yeah, I can't.
Unless it's a ridiculous bid. Unless I'm seeing like 140, 150 million.
But that's what it took for Usman to move. And
Yeah.
Jadon's
He was more
arguably
like
had a
100.
better
So wasn't he
season.
more like 114? I thought he was
And
a
he's
bit
a lot
cheap
younger.
with that. But Jadon Sancho, 13. I think it's 13 goals, 10 assists, something like that this season. Absolutely remarkable. Top 6 in Europe for dribbles completed.
No one has more
He's
assists
going at
than
nearly,
him.
he's
No,
going
no,
at
no,
nearly
it's just-
4 dribbles per 90.
Absolutely remarkable. Just the way he's adapted not even adapted his game. He's just looked comfortable the moment he played, even when he got eased in pretty much last year. And Lucien Favre's done a great job with him.
I would like to see another season from him.
And what I've liked in the last couple of weeks is as Dortmund's form has slightly stumbled, Sancho is still doing the business. 2 goals against Mainz at the weekend, played really well in that game.
He's a
It seems
massive
like
fan
Dortmund won't
favourite
win the
as well.
title now.
He's
But
a huge fan
I just
favourite.
don't think they need to sell him unless a ridiculous bid comes
Have you
in.
seen the interviews with the Dortmund fans that are like, he's the best talent we've ever seen at this club?
I mean, I'm not
Which,
surprised.
which is like a massive compliment to pay, because obviously they've seen some outrageous talent. But I don't feel like Dortmund ever need to sell. I don't think they've necessarily got a need to sell, but
They choose to.
they choose to sell because they know that they can reinvest that 100 to 110 million and get 3 to 4 young players that they could then sell for another 100.
But
That's their whole business model, is that?
Yeah, I agree. That is definitely their business model. But when they've sold in the past, it's never been with players so young and so talented, I'd argue. They let Mario Götze go to Bayern. They let Hummels go to Bayern. They let Lewandowski ultimately went on a free. But these were players towards the end of their career. Sancho is someone you can build your side around for the next 5 and 6
was
years.
like 22, 23 when he
Was he not a bit older than that? I
No,
thought he was more like
no.
25.
Ousmane Dembele was like 21.
No, Goetze
as well.
was like 22, 23, and Ousmane
Yeah,
Dembele
maybe I've got
was
that
like
wrong. I just
21.
think Sancho, if they want to do anything in the next 3 to 4 years, which has to be their aim, especially with Bayern going through a bit of a turnover themselves, they've got to keep Sancho.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one. I personally think that they'll be willing to let him go for the right bid. At like 100 million euros, anything around that sort of 100 million euro mark, they'll be saying, we bought this guy in for, what was it in the end?
7,
8.
something like that?
7, 8, we're turning 93 million pounds worth of profit. Can we say no
In
to
18
that?
months.
I just don't think they
And
can say no to it.
What if he breaks his leg next
Yeah.
year? What if he has a down year and suddenly we're looking at 60? You know, like think about Leon Bailey at Leverkusen. Like a year ago, people were talking about 60, 70 mil for him, and now literally no one's talking about him.
Oh, I want him to stay at Dortmund for his own development.
So do I, but I think for the right money, I also don't think there's necessarily the pressure of like, you have to be in the Champions League with Jadon Sancho. If you can get him to buy into the project you're trying to make, then it's a signing that could possibly happen, because it's not a player that's played in the Champions League season on season on season. His career's got so many years left that he'll be thinking, I'm going to get time in the Champions League.
Yeah. What do you guys think about if we're talking about Sancho, two slightly cheaper options in someone like Memphis Depay, bringing him back to Old Trafford, or someone like Tovan as well? I'm not sure whether he really fits what Man United are trying to do, but both incredible records.
Tovan would be good, but I feel like his Newcastle season has blighted him within the Premier League sort of.
He'd have got a move last summer if it hadn't been for like that.
And Memphis just can't play off that right. If Memphis could have played off the right, he'd still be at Man United.
At the same time, I would probably get Memphis back to try and use him for something else. So, for instance, if you got Memphis back and tried to, like, I don't know, go to Valencia and do something for Gonzalo Guedes, or I don't know, like maybe there's a deal to be done with Memphis for somebody else. Yeah. But I don't know who that would be. I mean,
Jadon Sancho. Use your buyback options, get Memphis in for 30 million, and then say we'll swap Memphis and Jadon, but with a bit of cash as well, and then you're saving yourself a big old chunk.
And they've also, Dortmund, they've got to replace Pulisic, they've got to replace Sancho, but also Royce is, this is his first season where he's played significant minutes in a long time, and I would be thinking, how do we replace him? And Depay is probably the player who looks most like Royce. Actually.
Yeah, I think they'll bring Alexander Isaac back in the summer, who's had an incredible season, really, great. Isn't it, Willem?
They're also heavily linked with David Neres as well.
And heavily linked with Martin Odegaard as well today.
Yeah, interesting.
Who's had a really
looked
good
like
season.
He was going to Ajax, but I mean, Odegaard has been sensational this season.
So we're saying we need a right winger, Man United, at least one central midfielder,
a right back,
and a centre back.
Just that.
That should be fine.
Not much work to be done. I don't think we'll get all of those done in one summer. There's also a lot of dead wood that's got to be shifted. There's a lot of problems behind the scenes at Manchester United. There's almost as many problems behind the scenes at Man United as there is at Chelsea.
Joe,
big claim.
What do you think to the argument that Man United shouldn't have appointed Ole Gunnar Solskjaer permanently until the end of the season? Because personally, in my view, they've slightly messed up in that I think they must have sounded out Poch, but if you can get Poch for the next 5 years, you get Poch over Solskjaer. Yeah. And it felt like a bit of heart ruling head at that time when they appointed Solskjaer permanently, in my opinion.
I definitely think it was a little bit of heart ruling head in terms of the Solskjaer appointment. I think the trouble is you had to bite the bullet in that month period, because teams get business done so early now that if you don't make a decision, not only do you have contractual problems with a number of big name players, David De Gea runs out in 2020, I'm sure he wanted assurances of who his manager is going to be. Let's not forget Marcus Rashford's got 1 year left on his contract, wanted assurances of who his manager is going to be. And also, if you're trying to identify players, you've kind of just got to back a horse. And they backed Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Maybe it will turn out to be a poor decision, but the decision had to be made. And if we couldn't get hold of Poch, then what was the alternative?
Yeah, that was the thing. I think they must have tried for Poch, because I just don't see a way that they thought, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, we'll back him for the next 5 years to win a trophy over Pochettino.
I don't think they would have tried for Poch. I think if Solskjaer came in and they said to him, you have the possibility of earning this job, then because of his results, they pretty much had to give him the job.
Give it to him.
The only way they could have not offered him the job is if they'd said, like, there's no way you can earn this job this season. We're definitely going for someone else in the summer.
I don't understand.
Because what more could he have done?
The
argument of too early, I think, is not the correct phrasing. I think it's either the right decision or the wrong decision. I think you've got to back him or not back him. I don't think it would have mattered whether you'd wait until the end of the season and then gone, nah, you can go back to mould now, or whether you'd have appointed him after 2 games and given it to him.
I agree that they.
I
think
thought it was
overall-
foolish, to be honest.
Overall, they shouldn't have appointed him if they want to win. If they want to win league titles, but at the same time, like I think, in that case, Solskjaer might not have come and just said like, right, I'm giving up my job in order to be caretaker for a bit with no shot at getting the job full time. I don't know if he'd have bothered.
I mean, let's be clear though. United could still if United finish in the top 4, which is an outside shot, but if it does
No, it could still
happen,
happen.
then we'll all be saying in 2 more months' time, what a job he's done, incredible. He had to get it.
Champions League quarter-final and
Champions
top
League
four.
quarter-final,
Especially when
and
you took over and you were close to the relegation zone in the top 4.
exactly. So in 2 months' time, we could be saying, oh my God, that was a great decision to appoint him.
Yeah. I just think either way, I just thought not going for Pochettino will turn out to be a long-term error, and you've gone for short-term gain. I just don't see Solskjaer having the capability so far to rebuild this squad in the way he needs to. Although having said that, supposedly one of the key reasons they gave it to him was he was so impressive in chats about how he wanted to rebuild the squad and what he was
But
planning
you've also
to do.
got to think, like, everybody's hammered Ollie over like the last 8 days or whatever since,
Yeah, I'm not a
or over
fan
the
of
last
that,
4
but-
weeks, and said, oh, you know, the wheels have come off Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Ole's not on the wheel anymore. Like, what more could Ollie have done? I actually think his squad is this level. He's just, this is
So
it.
you think the overachieving in this
Yeah,
first
you always
12
see
games,
you
yeah.
always see a spike when a
And
manager
it
first
couldn't
comes
get
in.
worse under Mourinho, so there was always going to be a bounce.
But like, this is the level.
Yes.
This is Manchester United right now. They are not good enough to beat Barcelona. They are going to lose to Arsenal, who are probably slightly ahead of them in terms of level. Teams like Wolves will pick them off. Like, this is Manchester United's current level. There is a load of work to do behind the scenes and at managerial appointment, and at managerial level between his coaching staff. United aren't underperforming, I don't think. This is just the level.
I don't think so either.
that's why you go for the more experienced manager,
Yeah.
you know, who's got more credibility and probably more ability to bring in these top players. I think loads of players want to work for Pochettino. No one really knows what Solskjaer is as a manager yet. I don't think
Pochettino's shown a particularly good eye for talent at Spurs. I just think,
that's
he's
limited by resources.
I think he's an amazing well, to some extent. I think he's an
Still
amazing.
spent 30 million on some pretty strong players. Like, look at his identification of like.
Soldado.
You don't know whether it's him. I don't find to be fair, but like Ng, tragic. Nkudu, tragic. Fernando Llorente could argue has not
30
been a
mil on
great hit.
Sissoko.
Could argue
Sissoko,
Lamella hasn't really worked
not
out.
brilliant. Lamella,
I think that was
pretty
before
average.
him, though. But yeah, I mean, like this is the thing. Like, so I can imagine Pochettino saying, "You're going to back me. You're going to pay like 40 mil to get me out of Spurs. You're going to pay me huge wages to be here. Then I want control of transfers." And Man United are clearly moving away from that towards a sporting director model. So I can understand as well them saying, "You know what? We're going to go and we're going to try and get, let's say, Paul Mitchell, and Solskjaer will work with the players he's got and get them playing up to their level rather than below it." Rather than we're going to let Pochettino rebuild our squad, having literally no idea what he'll do when he's got a credit card.
Fair. Although they still haven't got that sporting director, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that's a very, very hard appointment for Manchester United to make because it's not. United are so big. I feel like it's not the regular sporting director role. It's like you've got to go and find someone that can also work really well with Ed Woodward. Because Ed Woodward is not, as much as Man United fans hate Ed Woodward, he's not going to get moved on. United are still the biggest cash cow in world football, and he has exponentially helped that cash cow. Despite the fact there's been a downturn on the field results, off the field results are just as important to Manchester United. It is a business, and he is doing a good job on the business side, not on the football side. So you have to find someone who's going to work shoulder to shoulder with Ed effectively.
Yeah.
I think that part of the reason Man United are so constantly being linked with Edwin van der Sar, because you know that he's done an okay job at Ajax, seemingly alongside Overmars since they've taken over. Would they work better because he's an ex-Man United player? That's the sort of level United are currently thinking at. They're not thinking of where you can just go and get one of the best sporting. You can go and get Monchi, and he's just going to come in and go, well, I'm going to have these boys. And Edward was going to go, well, you're not, because my commercial doesn't work with my commercial deals. So United are a business. That's the crux of the matter. And it's annoying, but it's true.
Fair enough.
Either way, lots of surgery for Manchester United to do this summer. At least 4 players we're probably going to be signing. Let us know who you think we should get in the comments below. Moving on now to your quick fire questions. The first one was sent in by Tom Golazzo. He says, which player has been the biggest disappointment this season?
Pat, do you want to take this?
I know who you guys are going to go for, so I'm going to go for a bit of a left field one, and I'm going to say Gabby Jesus. I think his underlying performance is amazing. Like, I love him. I think he's going to be a star because he has a load of shots. He creates a load of chances, nearly 4 shots a game, 2 key passes, couple of dribbles, constantly in the right position. Misses a lot. Like, this year, I think he's just had an inability to score. Like, he's got 7 goals and 3 assists against an expected goals and assist total of 15. So he's got about 2/3 of where he should be. And don't get me wrong, I think.
Do you think that's because he doesn't start and doesn't get a run in the team?
No, because normally not starting for a super club actually means that your numbers are better. Like, you play fewer minutes, you tend to play the last 20, 30 minutes, or you tend to play against weaker sides, because obviously they're going to start Aguero in the big games. And as a result, actually, those players tend to get much bigger numbers than you'd expect. I think his numbers are incredible, but at the same time, I just think if he were their first choice striker, we would be hearing some grumblings of dissatisfaction from City fans. But because they know that Aguero is still their regular starter, Gabby Jesus is still allowed to kind of come on and miss a couple of sitters, and then he scores the 3rd or 4th one. So I'm a little bit disappointed that his goal tally doesn't match his underlying performance this season, but I'm not saying he's had a bad season. I just think if he wants to lead the line for City for the next 10 years, he's going to need to start finishing these chances. And I think he probably will, but right now, would you rely on him in a big game in the way you'd rely on Aguero? I probably wouldn't.
And you've seen Aguero being rushed back from injuries, this season on quite a few occasions.
Yeah. And I think Sterling also might actually move into the centre as he gets older. Sterling profiles more and more like a striker with every passing year.
I do think there's a bit of a... quite a few people batter the City squad players for not being quite at their level. Gundogan gets a lot of crap. Mahrez does as well. Gabby Jesus. But I sort of asked myself, what more could they do? They're part of an absolute winning machine, not in the Champions League, I'll admit, but they've had an unbelievable season once again. And Gabby Jesus has stepped up when he has needed to. His contribution over the last 3 years has still been great.
Yeah.
For a 22-year-old striker. I think it's harsh to say he's the disappointment of the season.
I think he has been disappointing, though. So for instance, well, I don't know, we need to go into yours in order to deal with this. But I think Riyad Mahrez, for instance, though, Riyad Mahrez, it's not his fault that he got offered a big contract and a big move to Manchester City, but I think he is quite clearly not at the required level. Yeah. He's good when he's on the field, but he just does not fit that side.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. And we said this when he first joined, but Hammer was peddling the train of he could easily cut it to the top 4 clubs.
Well, it's not like he can't cut it. He's just not a good fit. I think at a different top club, maybe he would be better, but you do... I don't know, actually.
Should have come to United.
Now I've said that, I look at him next to Silva, and I look at him next to Sane, and I look at him next to Sterling, and I think, yeah, this guy shouldn't
I just think he's one of the clear victims of being horrifically overpriced. I actually don't think there'd be a problem if he cost 40, but it's because he's City's record signing. Yeah. People were expecting more. He's actually done fine. He's just not been great.
His numbers are actually pretty similar to Gabby Jesus.
Yeah.
They're very similar to Sterling's.
He's 0.8 expected goals and assists per 90, which is 0.1 less than Sane.
But a lot of League Cup appearances and stuff in there.
Yeah, but that's what he was bought for, effectively. He was a very overpriced squad player.
God. Jesus, I'm not sure he was, but I actually think he was bought probably to come into the first team, but he's just not been at that level. I actually don't think Pep's the biggest fan of Leroy Sane. We all love him, but clearly he's not the biggest fan of him. Otherwise, he'd be starting every game, wouldn't he? Who are you going for?
Well, I'm just going to go for one that almost makes me quite sad, because we have seemed to get this one wrong, but I actually think when you look into it, it's not as bad. It's Naby Keita. Obviously, he had a really good year in the Bundesliga last year, backing up a great campaign in 16-17, not playing for as good a side last year in the Bundesliga as well, which is quite crucial to note. But he got 6 goals, 5 assists. I've got his stats down here: 4.7 tackles and interception, over 2 shots per game, over 3 dribbles per game, 1.8 key passes per 90. Just an unbelievable output from a midfielder that could seemingly do everything. Liverpool paid his release clause, they got it done nice and early. He had a full pre-season, there's no excuses on that front, but it just hasn't really worked out for him. He's got 1 goal and 1 assist in the league, which I believe have both come in the last couple of weeks. At least the goal against Southampton was his first. And his numbers have dropped off quite considerably, but he's still averaging close to 2 shots per game, over 2 dribbles per game, about 1 key pass per 90 as well. His tackles and interceptions numbers have dropped quite considerably, which is the sort of more baffling thing. But then he has had this back injury, and I know we often get accused of being biased to play players we want to, and maybe I'm slightly seeing this with a silver lining even. But I imagine a back injury, you're out with a back injury, really debilitating, and you come back and Wijnaldum's having the season of his life, at least for the first 6-7 months of the season, was playing like I'd never seen him play before. And it's been really difficult to get into that Liverpool midfield, but in the last few weeks he's really, come into his own, and hopefully we'll see a big season from him next year. So disappointment of this season, but I'm not losing hope that he can't turn it around in the long term.
At the same time with Naby Keita, I find it weird that I see people looking at his numbers at Liverpool versus his numbers at RB Leipzig and using those to bash him, but then saying, well, of course he can't get in the team because of Wijnaldum. Like, there's literally not a single number in which Wijnaldum is better than Naby Keita. But Wijnaldum does other things for the side. But I don't know. I mean, yeah, Keita, he just looks unfit. Like, he's just looked unfit, I think, most of the season. He played as a 10 earlier in the season, which I think meant that he had, lower defensive output, but maybe boosted his attacking numbers. But he's just been shifted around this season. He's been unfit a lot of the time. I think that if he manages to see out the rest of the year without any injuries and then has a good rest over the summer, I think he'll have a really good year next year. But on the other hand, you could argue he's done kind of what they wanted him to do. You could argue it's the same as Gabi Jesus. Like, has Gabi Jesus allowed Man City to compete on multiple fronts?
Yes.
Yes, he has. Has Naby Keita allowed Liverpool to compete on
yeah.
multiple fronts? I would argue he got them through that 2 legs against Bayern Munich in the round of 16. Yeah. So, I mean, squad depth is one of those really hard things to quantify. You're like, has he been a superstar? No. Has he allowed them to get through games they might not have otherwise? Yeah.
Definitely. I think he's played a slightly different position to RB when he was at RB Leipzig as well, at least in terms of how it's come out in his statistics as well. His XG chain, his XG build-up, have gone up by about 0.3, 0.4 in both statistics, which suggests he's getting more heavily involved in play and not on the end of things, which would obviously affect his output. And Liverpool's midfield is built to feed that front line. It's not really built for a runner from deep. It's a counter-attack as soon as possible, let the front 3 cause damage and occasionally get in the box.
It is get it to the feet of the forwards within 2 passes, which is not the case at Leipzig.
But we've seen in recent weeks, Jordan Henderson was dropped a couple of weeks ago, he's come back into the team. Naby Keita is pretty much, he'll probably start in the home leg at least, I think, against Barcelona. Maybe not away from home, they'll probably go for a more solid Henderson presence in there. But Fabinho, Keita and maybe Milner at the home leg. But yeah, as I said before, I can only see it going up for him personally.
Let's get some more quickfire questions then. We're going to fly through these ones because we spoke on that quickfire question for quite an extended period of time.
Yeah, sorry.
The name's Mitch says, with Juve being knocked out of the Champions League again, is it time for Allegri to move on?
I would say no, just because there's so much talk about Antonio Conte going back there. And for me, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. I don't think this.
But for Allegri, for his career, forget Juve, for Allegri's career.
For his career, you now look at the options of where he could go, and there's very few out there. I mean, if Valverde gets sacked, maybe he could go to Barcelona.
He's not going to. He's still in for a shot with treble.
Yeah,
he'll go another year as well.
He'll definitely go another year. I mean, if Kovac eventually goes at Bayern Munich, he might be linked at Bayern Munich. That would be an interesting fit.
Sick.
You can't really see him going to a Premier League club anytime soon. All the top 6 look pretty settled.
Unless Poch was to move.
But that doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Would you go from Juve to
see him moving? Probably not.
No, I wouldn't either. I actually can't see him leaving. I think he'll just continue to roll on. Maybe until Cristiano comes to an end. He'll really give it his belters with Cristiano.
Unless it's something like a sabbatical.
When Cristiano kind of comes to the end of his career, I think you'll see Allegri move on for whichever job is open at that time. Noah, BWFC says, manager of the season.
Ooh, Pato, who do you reckon?
Pochettino. I'd have said this even if they went out against Man City last night. I think what he's achieved, given... It's really weird that I see a lot of Spurs fans saying that their midfielders are good, but also that Pochettino has been amazing this season. I think you kind of have to accept that one of those cannot be true. And I think their midfielders are horrible. Like, I think Harry Winks is like fine. Sissoko, I think, is dreadful. Wanyama's been out all season.
Sissoko's turned up recently, though. Sissoko, over the last 4 months,
I've seen Cameron Jerome score a hat-trick before, but I'm not going to say he's like a great player.
Yeah, but you haven't seen Cameron Jerome score and perform at the level Moussa Sissoko is against the teams that he's doing it against.
Moussa Sissoko did that at the Euros, but he's still a dreadful player. He's a dreadful player. But
harsh.
I don't know. Pochettino, what he's done with that team, I think is staggering. Like, in the absence of Harry Kane, in the absence of Ali, in the absence of Eriksen, like, they have still been amazing. They can beat pretty much anybody. Over 2 legs, they are a nightmare to face. And they're just... I mean, have they been as good defensively this year? In fact, I would say overall they haven't been as good this season as they were last year or the year before. But the fact that they've still been competitive is, in my mind, pretty much entirely down to Poch and probably Heung-Min Son.
Yeah, I think my shouts just across Europe as well, not necessarily in the Premier League. I think Ten Hag definitely in with a shout. I mean, going for a treble with Ajax is just an unbelievable achievement, given that they've not even had much domestic success over the last few years. They've been pretty much resoundingly beaten down by PSV over the last few years. So I think he's in with a shout. If he wins even a domestic double, he's done an incredible job with Ajax, let alone get into a Champions League semi-final with an incredible chance of beating Tottenham Hotspur. I also think there is a shout for Ralph Rangnick.
Yeah.
Coming back in, man, it's like, I think that's a massively underappreciated skill. Just to go, yeah, okay, right, I'm sporting director for 2 years. Oh, you need me in a supposed stepping stone year? Yeah, I'll just jump back in and finish third with you boys. Don't worry about it. While we wait for Nagelsmann to become available, I'll just come in from a sporting director, revert to the tactics I used to get us promoted in the first place, and crush it again with a team that is in transition itself. It's incredible ability just to do it over and over again, Ralf Rangnick.
I mean, Nagelsmann and Adi Hutter as well in the Bundesliga. I mean, like, Eintracht have been absolutely unreal since Christmas. And Nagelsmann, Hoffenheim still have pretty much the third or fourth best attack in Europe. And when you look at Hoffenheim's team, you're like, okay, Demirbay is pretty good, and like Kramaric is pretty good, but like they're just a bunch of guys. Like they're just a bunch of blokes, and like somehow their attack is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I just do not understand it. I don't know how he's done that. He's a genius.
Fair. I would go, I mean, from a Premier League perspective, I think Javi Garcia and Nuno Espirito Santo have been the standouts in the lower reaches, well, not the top six, but my manager of the year has to be Klopp. I honestly think a back-to-back, well, final last year, semi-final this year, and people that say that he got an easy draw against Porto, yes, he did. But he got through a group stage that included PSG and Napoli. He then beat Bayern Munich in the last 16 over 2 legs. I honestly don't understand when I look at Liverpool's side, in terms of man-to-man against City, how they are so close to winning their first Premier League title in, 29 years even. It is remarkable what he's done. None of those Liverpool midfielders, except for a fully fit and firing Naby Keita, could get anywhere near that City starting midfield, in my opinion.
I think City are a little bit. Their squad's a bit overrated.
I actually
no one gets it over Bernardo, David, De Bruyne or Fernandinho.
I think they've got the better.
They do in a proper
I think they've got the
midfield.
better goalkeeper. I think they've probably got
narrowly better goalkeeper.
The outstanding defender.
They've got a better.
The outstanding.
They've got a better right back. They've got a better left back.
Better forward line?
Their forward line is maybe as good.
Salah definitely starts for Man City.
I don't know. I thought
As does Sadio
Salah
Mane.
does. I think that's it.
As does Sadio Mane.
Over Sterling.
No, not over Sterling.
I think it's pretty close.
And Aguero starts, and then that whole. I mean, their defence and goalkeeper, I'll give it to you, probably better. And they've got the better defensive
But the
record
reason
this year.
they're playing like David Silva and De Bruyne are in midfield, like Klopp would just never do that. Like that's not the sort of players they are for a Liverpool side. Like, I mean, I think actually, like, we look at City's squad and we then overrate how good it is a little bit because we look at the players individually, whereas the balance in the squad is nowhere near as good, I don't think. Like, so
they started to play Milner as pretty much everywhere this year.
But Milner's deserved to play everywhere. He's amazing. Like you look at Liverpool, you look at City, and they're kind of all season long they've been using Laporte, Zinchenko. They've used Mendy obviously a tiny bit. Delph. Like, they've had to do so many weird things to try and find a solution at left back. Like, does that mean I think that their squad has really significant problems in it. Like, so, don't get me wrong, like, is it amazing overall? Yeah, but is it perfect? Like, not really. I think Liverpool's is arguably better.
It'd be a much better achievement, in my opinion, for Klopp to win the league than Pep with the squad they've got.
I think, yeah, probably. But on the other hand, I think like Pep doing this with like a 34-year-old Fernandinho as his only proper central midfielder is pretty remarkable.
Converting Bernardo Silva from an out-and-out winger into a central midfielder.
And I'd say the same
right
thing with
back.
Nuno. Like, I get that we all want to give Nuno credit because Wolves have done really well, but I think Wolves that's Wolves' level. Like, I look at the talent in that squad and I'm like, yeah, that's where Wolves should be. Like the talent in their squad is mental.
Yeah, I mean, we did predict
probably
a
do have
top.
the
We,
seventh best.
we probably predicted this
I mean,
a 10th finish.
to-
but
I don't want to not give him
To
credit,
bring
but
in,
like, I think he has the
Ruben
7th best
Neves,
squad in the league.
João
probably.
Moutinho, Rui Patricio,
Oh,
Bolly at
100%.
centre
His
half.
resources are, the envy of
He
everyone
spent
outside
nearly
the top
40
six.
mil on Raul Jimenez.
But that doesn't take away from the fact they're a promoted side that are probably going to finish 7th.
Yeah, but I think that's just like based on this idea that like, yes, they're a promoted side. Whereas I think when you actually look at the quality of the squad before the season, has he overachieved? I would say no. I think he's achieved exactly what I wanted him to. I'm not going to not give him credit, but he hasn't. Pochettino has done more than he should have done with what he had. I would argue Klopp has probably done slightly more than he should have with what he
agree with
has.
that, actually, yeah.
Whereas Nuno, I think, has done basically what I expected him to
Whereas
do. with the talent
Javi
he's got.
Gracia is
agree
out
with
here
that.
because the squad is a relegation candidate.
I
It's
took
a
them to go
relegation.
down.
Yeah, I did as well. It's a relegation candidate. Capoue and Doucouré, what has happened to them under Gracia? They're so average. They're such average footballers.
You make the same point about Warnock. If Warnock keeps Cardiff up, that is a piece of magic. How has that happened?
Warnock will have played 10 months without a striker.
Yeah. Who they still pay up there? Callum Paston.
They've just got
Top goal scorer,
Bobby
Sol
Reed.
Bamba.
They've got guys off the street. Like if you went into a pub and just pointed at 11 guys, that is Cardiff's team. A guy scored against us at the Emirates called Nathaniel Mendez-Lang. No one's heard of him. No one in his family could pick him out of a crowd. Scored a great goal against us.
He's like an academy player from a big club. And
I think they will
stay
stay up as well. Brighton are in
Mental.
dire form.
That is genuinely remarkable for Cardiff to stay up. I cannot put. And you know what? If they stay up, I think as well they've arguably deserved it. I don't think they've been like. They've at worst been the 18th. They've been 17th, 18th worst in the league.
They haven't clearly been the worst, as we all
They're
predicted.
better, they've been better than Fulham, and they've obviously been better than Huddersfield because like literally like one dog like on the pitch would be better than Huddersfield. Like so, I just don't
And
understand.
Brighton are disgraceful.
Yeah, I know. I feel bad because I'd like Chris Hughton to succeed, but I think that might just not be a great fit there.
Before we move on to personal questions, let's get a quick one from Gopal Sharma, who says, "What is your dream Champions League final?" Let's keep it very short, Dukes.
Dream Champions League final. I would go with. Everyone's going to say Barcelona.
This is such a hammer answer.
I personally don't.
Very quick, dude.
I personally don't agree. I'll go Ajax Liverpool. I don't want to see Barcelona win it.
Ajax Barca, Ajax win.
Absolute Ajax Barca, man. That would be one of the most historic finals.
Don't care as long as Ajax win.
Personal questions time then. Let's do this one. Wilkes134 says, "Which TV show do you hate but everyone else seems to love?"
Oh, Jesus.
Hate.
TV show did I really not get on with recently?
I mean,
I started watching that program. Did you guys ever watch that?
Yeah.
With the
I read
creepy
the book
man.
as well, yeah.
Didn't like that at all. That gave me the heebie-jeebies. Wasn't a fan of that at all. And another one that I'm currently watching at the moment with my girlfriend, so I hope she doesn't see this, but we're watching Fleabag at the moment. I don't like it at all.
Really?
We're watching it.
I don't believe
We're halfway through series 2, but I'm just not feeling it.
Fleabag's so good, man.
Oh my god. Everybody seemed to really like 13 Reasons Why.
Oh.
And again, I hope my girlfriend's not watching this, but I just thought it was crap.
Really?
Yeah.
I also thought Bodyguard was really overrated. Towards the end of the series, that really fell apart.
Yeah, the ending of the series was terrible. Pat, you got anything?
I mean, apparently the whole world still loves like the fucking Big Bang Theory, and I feel like I don't know anyone who's ever enjoyed an episode of that show. You have terrible taste.
I mean, we're both here.
You have literally appalling taste, didn't you? Oh my god.
Never watched Little Sheldon.
You people should be euthanized. That is terrible. Like, oh yeah, and the weird one where it's just like, oh, the tiny kid with a bow tie.
Yeah, it's
New Sheldon or whatever it's
Get
called.
in the bin. Honestly, get out.
So and then you name a TV show.
What? Well, I did just name
Oh, was
one.
that? Oh, yeah, of
But I
course,
don't know.
yeah,
I mean, like, I think there are lots of shows that are a bit overrated, but I still like them.
Like Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones is definitely overrated, but I still like it. But it's not shit, is it? It's just not great.
Never watched an episode. To
We
be
talked
honest.
about this.
You've never watched an episode of Game of Thrones?
He doesn't rate Game of Thrones, but watches it.
He just literally hasn't listened to what I said. It's a simpleton.
I've never watched an episode of Game of Thrones, but
That is weird because it is quite a big cultural touchstone. Like quite a lot of people watch
yeah,
it.
everybody seems to bang on about it.
It's
Maybe
fine.
that's
It's fun.
there you go.
It's
But I
just
just
like-
don't want to watch
but it's
Dragons.
not-
It's quite
It's
impressive.
not amazing.
You've managed to bypass every episode.
I just don't want to watch
Every one of the 71.
I mean, all I ever see when there's a clip online is like incest, dragons, or dwarfs. I've no interest in watching any three of them.
Have you seen the Lord of the Rings films?
I've watched a couple of them.
Yeah, weren't you the guy in the office who hadn't seen the Lord of the Rings films? Yes.
I mean, it's just a bit.
It's like that, but with.
Wow, it's
That's
just like,
Game of
like the Lord of the Rings
But
films.
you're not averse to fantasy. You loved Ready Player One and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I like the book. I thought the film was terrible.
film
Oh, I
is
see.
dreadful.
Awful. But equally, yeah, just like Lord of the Rings, like I just really don't care about watching a dwarf run across the country.
Oh, Game
You know
Game
what?
of Thrones is life.
Game of Thrones.
The plot is a bit more complicated than just watching Tyrion run across the country.
I don't know.
The plot
just
is
seems
complicated, but it's
overcomplicated.
not
You're
good.
mixing up Gimli and Tyrion there. He did a lot of running.
But
Gimli.
also, Lord of the Rings has a story which like advances, whereas Game of Thrones doesn't. It just like weaves around all over the place.
Who's gonna
People
get
like
to
Game
the
of Thrones
throne?
because they're confused by prestige TV. If they see something that looks good on screen, then they're like, this must be good. This is like when people said for the first couple of seasons of House of Cards, they were like, oh, it's some of the best TV ever made. Of course it isn't. That's an embarrassing thing to say. How dare you? And you know what? It's now. It was all along. Game of Thrones, fine.
Never watched an episode. Either way, that is the end of this week's Sunday Vibes. If you want to
What
get your
a tender.
question answered next week, put it in the comments below, tweet it to us, or even post it on our Reddit page. What else is happening this weekend though, Douglas?
Go over to Euro Football Daily, watch Friday's Continental Club, watch all the Stat Wars.
We don't have Continental Club on Friday.
We don't.
We're
Watch
not
the
in
one-on-one.
Yes.
Which is me talking about homophobia in football. Very important topic. Please go and check it out. Also go watch all the Stat Wars as well. Stat Wars, the champions this week was between Bobby Seagull and Michael McCubbin in the second quarter final after Joe got battered by Zach. So go and check that out. And also go watch, the highlights of the live stream if you fancy
God.
it as well.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, thanks very much for watching, guys. Goodbye.
Bye.
How did you get battered by Zach?